you first, your name first, and then everyone else?
No, I want you to start and say why we're here, introduce the groups, then introduce me.
Okay. Okay, we are now live.
Okay, I have to.
Good morning, everyone. So we are here today to discuss some amazing comprehensive search warrant reform legislation. We have a number of guests joining us today. I want to take some time to recognize the people that have taken time out of their schedules to be here today. So we are joined by Senator Brian Benjamin. We are joined by Assembly Member Daniel O'Donnell, Dr. Peter Kraska, professor at Eastern Kentucky University, DeRay McKesson of Campaign Zero, Tamika Mallory, co-founder of Until Freedom. We will be joined by Hazel Dukes, president of the NAACP New York State Conference, Pastor Kaji Dosa, senior minister of Park Avenue Christian Church, Donna Lieberman, executive director, New York City Liberties Union. Now, to start our press conference on this very important legislation, we're going to begin with the person who introduced that legislation on the state level, and that is New York State Senator James Sanders Jr.
Thank you kindly. I appreciate that. Good morning. Good morning, all. It's a very good morning anytime you're fighting for justice, anytime that you're trying to make sure that the people's lives are so much better. And I want to pay homage to all of the groups that have fought hard long before we got here to make sure that this issue, we see some justice here. And what is this issue? We're speaking about a situation of no knocks, a situation of where warrants are given out to the police department and they proceed to go into the community, often with no knock, which means they don't have to, and what they call a slow knock, which means that they quickly tell you, and if you can't respond, it turns into a no knock. Let's give an example of this. Please play the tape and let's see what we're talking about.
Reveals how Chicago police raided the wrong apartment and detained an innocent woman. An investigation by our Chicago station, that WBBM TV, uncovered the video, which we have to tell you is very hard to watch. Police tried to withhold it, and city officials tried to keep you from even seeing it. Anjanette Young, who was getting changed at the time, sued the city of Chicago over the botched effort to arrest a suspect who actually lived next door. Nearly 2 years after the incident, a judge forced Chicago police to turn over a video of this raid. Dave Savini of WBBM TV broke the story and spoke with Ms. Young as she watched the body cam footage.
I had just gotten home from work, and while I was undressing in my bedroom,
Anjanette Young, a social worker, had just finished her shift at the hospital when police entered her home.
and it happened so fast, I didn't have time to put on clothes.
She was surrounded by 12 male officers.
And I'm just standing there. I mean, terrified, humiliated, not even understanding why in that moment that this is happening to me.
Almost immediately, Young is handcuffed.
If I had made one wrong move, I felt like they would have shot me. I truly believe that they would have shot me.
A police officer wraps a short coat around her shoulder, still leaving her front fully exposed. Eventually, one of the officers holds a blanket in place.
You need to tell me what you're looking for. It felt like forever for me. It felt like forever.
Young tells the raid team at least 43 times they are in the wrong place.
You got the wrong house.
She was right. They were in the wrong house. WBBM's investigation uncovered police simply took the word of an informant who said a felon with a handgun lived in the apartment.
I've been living here for
So where was the target? Our investigation revealed he was awaiting trial on home confinement here at a different apartment in Anjanette Young's complex. How easy would it have been to locate him? Easy, real easy, because he was wearing a police tracking device, an electronic monitoring bracelet. Keenan Salter is Anjanette Young's attorney.
If this had been a young woman in Lincoln Park by herself in her home, naked, a young woman.
Okay,
Well, I think that you're getting the gist of what we're talking about. Too many innocent people are being killed, are being harassed, are being brutalized and traumatized. And it's dangerous to the police also. So we are going to remember Breonna Taylor. We are going to remember Alberta Spruill. We are going to remember this poor woman from Chicago. We're going to remember all of these people. We're going to remember that family in Brooklyn. We're going to remember all of these people that we have heard about and don't know about. And we're going to come up with the most comprehensive bill in the nation. That's right. New York is going to get it right because we're the Empire State. We are going to have a bill which uses no knock in the proper way, that makes sure that when no knock was introduced, it was 1980 roughly, and there were 2,000 a year. They're up to 60,000 a year and growing. This is not really critical. There are better ways of dealing with this, especially in some of the states where you have the castle rule. A man can stand his ground. The police break in, they're going to get shot. This is why many police officers are joining us in calling for reform of this. But you're going to hear about these things. You're going to hear more because we have gathered some of the best people on this. In a moment, you'll hear from my colleague in government, Senator Brian Benjamin. But I've also been informed that Assembly Member Khalil Anderson is on here, and at some point we're going to let him speak. Well, Anne-Marie, introduce our next person. Stand by as we make history and justice in New York State.
okay, so our next speaker is the co-prime sponsor of the bill, of Senator Sanders' bill in the state Senate, and that is Senator Brian Benjamin.
Thank you. First of all, I want to give a special thanks to Senator James Sanders, who has carried this bill and allowed me to join him as a co-prime sponsor recently. You know, one of the things I want to be very clear about is we've had a number of important criminal justice reform, police reform legislation that have been sitting for a while. This bill was sitting for over 20 years. Alberta Spruill, that incident in Harlem happened in 2003. I cannot go into all of the bills that have been waiting. And one of the things that really moved us this past summer was George Floyd's murder. And if not for that, and if not for the activism and engagement across this country, I'd be sitting here still trying to get an Eric Garner anti-chokehold act bill passed. And so one of the things that Senator Sanders and I talked about was we need to engage a lot of the national validators and players on this conversation so that we can come together, all of us, to try to get this bill passed. Not to try, to make sure this bill gets passed in this upcoming session. And why is that so important? There is too much discretion that are in the hands of the police departments around this country. The no-knock warrant being utilized in quote unquote drug cases, as far as I'm concerned, should not be occurring. This bill makes that a thing of the past. This bill also, in my view, provides some level of accountability and transparency as it relates to what is actually going on, right? I mean, I think, if you show up in plain clothes at my house in the middle of the night and bang down my door and break my door down, I don't know who you are. And just because you say that you're the police, that doesn't tell me anything. That's your word versus mine. I have no idea who's in my house. And so we create with this bill, and I know Assembly Member O'Donnell will get into that. We create some parameters that would create at least a better system going forward. And that is something that I think is important. Let me say, lastly, before I turn the floor over, you know, we together can get so much more done than us separated and us fighting. And I think the community of leaders that we have assembled here, and some of our validators, us working together, we will make this happen. The governor will sign this bill if we all come together and apply ourselves. And that's why I see my role is here. I'm Brother Sanders, part of the Get It Done team. So that's what I'm looking to make sure we do, because there are too many citizens who live in fear of this. And we have bad cases. We have Breonna Taylor case. But at the end of the day, if Tamika Mallory is in Louisville and we can't get no-knock warrants sort of reined in New York, what are we doing here? And so let's all work together. Let's do this across the country. New York can be the leading voice for how we get this done across the country. So I'm honored to be a part of this team. Thank you, Senator Sanders and Assembly Member O'Donnell, for allowing me to be a part of it.
Well put, Senator Benjamin. No one is more important to this bill than the next person who's going to be introduced. This is a person who has carried this long and hard, and we really need to give him his props, and I'm very honored to do so. Anne-Marie, please introduce our next speaker.
Yes, carrying the bill in the Assembly is Assembly Member Daniel O'Donnell.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to see everyone. I want to give a shout out to DeRay, who I didn't know until this week, but boy, is he an impressive human being and done yeoman's work on this subject. And to my friends in government, Brian Benjamin, my senator, and Senator Sanders, I just want to say to you, it's a pleasure to always be on the same team with the two of you, as we always are. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the man who wrote and introduced and repealed 50A of the Civil Rights Law, which was a 50-year mistake pending in the state of New York. And it's an uphill battle at times, but I do have some experience here in Albany getting things done. So I'm happy to turn my attention to this, which will become my #1 priority for 2021. So let me review what the elements of this new absolutely comprehensive change to the way warrants are executed in New York. It essentially bans no-knock warrants. And I put the essentially there, and there are certain exigent circumstances, but they are very rare. 2, it requires that the application for the search warrants, which are signed by judges, contain more upfront information than what they're required to do currently. 3, it bans all plainclothes search warrant executions, which is extraordinarily important. And it requires an audible announcement that they're there. That is one of the issues that is coming up in the Breonna Taylor case. And the truth is that one of the fights we've had before has to do with body cameras and police people saying, well, they're going to make us impossible to do our job. And no, they make it easier to do your job because we get to know whether or not you made an audible announcement. 4, it requires at least 30 seconds from the announcement before you take any further action. 5, this is very important. It bans the use of flashbang and military-style devices, and it eliminates nighttime raids. When you use those things, you're designed to stun. And to an ordinary person who has nothing to fear and has done nothing wrong, to be stunned in that way is a very, very dangerous thing. And so this bill ends that. It ends civil asset forfeiture. It ensures that any evidence that is seized in violation of these rules will not be used in any prosecution. It requires all video, audio footage, and it also requires paid restitution for property that is destroyed in the execution of warrants and all the mental harm and anguish caused by them. 9, it creates consequences for officers who violate these requirements. And number 10, it requires documentation of all warrant requests and executions to be made available for public review. When we allow the public to see what is actually happening, we provide some daylight. We automatically make things better. And there are times when we have bad actors, and sometimes you have the same bad actors applying for warrants baselessly. And so we, as the public, should know that. And so those are the basic 10 points that's in it. It is the most comprehensive warrant change legislation in the country. I wish I could tell you that I wrote it. I did not, but it doesn't matter to me who wrote it. When it's this good, I'm happy to make it mine. So thank you very much for having me, and I'm going to remain on this call to the very end, but I'm going to mute myself in the event my dog barks.
Well, we won't let your dog bark, but we will let Assemblymember Anderson speak if he wishes. Assembly member.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Senator Sanders and Assemblymember O'Donnell, for your leadership in this fight. Particularly you, Senator Sanders, for championing this bill in the Senate, and Assemblymember O'Donnell for championing this in the Assembly. We're looking forward to co-sponsoring this legislation, but also understanding the core of this issue. And it's that Black communities have been under attack by this no-knock warrant since the war on drugs and even before that. And the video that we saw earlier today is reminiscent of what we faced in the 1980s and the 1990s when police officers used to storm into our homes to, take people out of their homes and bring them to so-called justice. But a lot of the times these were done in ill faith and they weren't the right places, as we saw in the video. So we're looking forward to supporting this legislation. We're looking forward to making sure that we hold police officers accountable, and this is the best way to begin that process of holding police officers accountable. Thank you, Senator Benjamin on the Senate side, for being here today, and let's continue to fight.
Thank you, sir. I see so many of my friends here, Tamika Mallory, Donna Lieberman. I mean, if I made the mistake and gave everyone's name and left someone out, I'd be in a world of pain. So forgive me. I'm not going to name any names, but I will turn this back to Anne Marie, who will take it from here. Forgive me. I'm a coward.
Okay, so next we will be hearing about some of the research on no-knock warrants, no-knock raids, and this will come from Dr. Peter Kraska, professor of Eastern Kentucky University.
Dr. Kraska.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to provide some context for this critically important bill. I've spent the last 30 years researching firsthand the growth of police militarization. Police militarization is not just about the police acquiring and embracing military armament, it's also about what they do with it. This body of research has demonstrated that the central and most common use of military hardware and technology has been and remains today the violent, surprised, forced entry into people's homes in the search for evidence of low-level drug infractions. These no-knock and quick-knock dynamic entries have become a routine and normalized police practice in both large and small police departments across the nation. I've also been tracking the collateral damage of this practice since the 1990s. Families terrorized by the 8 to 30 officer tactical squads breaking into their homes, oftentimes in the pre-dawn or late night hours, breaking and raking windows, detonating explosive devices designed to shock people into submission, and in the case of Breonna Taylor, tragic deaths. Deaths and injuries, not just for the citizens, but as has happened as well for the police officers themselves when confronted with armed citizens that think their dwelling is being broken into. The use of this no-knock raid approach by police has grown exponentially over the last 40 years, from a few thousand a year in the early 1980s to a minimum of 60,000 per year today. Moreover, this police practice disproportionately impacts racial minorities and racial minority neighborhoods. In some jurisdictions, upwards of 80 to 90% are conducted on the homes of Black and brown citizens. The normalized practice of police conducting no-knock and quick-knock raids on people's homes is exactly what led to the death of Breonna Taylor. This senseless killing is a direct result of a series of routine police practices and a police search warrant system that has gone seriously awry. This needs to stop. It is an extremely high-risk, low-reward endeavor. These violent raids destroy homes, they destroy people's sense of security, they destroy community trust, they destroy police legitimacy, and most tragically can destroy the lives of people like Breonna Taylor. They are not worth the gain of a potential low-level drug arrest or the confiscation of some cash. What should matter most to any police department and those that guide them is the community's safety, trust, and sense of police legitimacy. No-knock and quick-knock raids, whether botched or routine, erode these pillars of effective policing. Thank you.
Well put, Doctor. I think it's your turn, Anne Marie. The doctor has spoken.
So I can go. I think that I'm next after Dr. Kraska. So I'm DeRay, one of the leaders of Campaign Zero. We'll talk through sort of how we got to this place. One, I want to show you support for this has actually been broad, including people in law enforcement. So Mark Lomax used to be the executive director of the National Tactical Officers Association, which is the biggest collection of officers who conduct SWAT raids across the country. And he acknowledges too that the time for these raids has passed. So I'll give you a second to just read his quote about this law specifically. Now, when we zoom all the way out, what we want to remind people and why this law matters the most is that there have been 2 states that have banned no-knock warrants, so Florida and Oregon. And then there are a couple states right now that are doing restrictions around the warrants. But what we know is that banning no-knock warrants actually does not stop the raids from happening. There are 2 types of warrants. There's a no-knock warrant, and then there's a knock and announce. A knock and announce is sort of a basic warrant. A knock and announce, like a basic search warrant, can actually turn into a no-knock raid at the moment of entry. So part of the work is to restrict the execution of no-knock warrants. And that's what Assemblymember O'Donnell explained really well. But then what he went on to explain is actually the meat of this, is that we actually have to restrict the execution of all search warrants so they can't turn into something else. And that is the hardest work to do. It's the most important work. And as of today, New York State is the only place in the country engaged in that work. When we poll people across the country, there's broad-based support for this. So across the country, there are a majority of Americans say that we should ban raids. And what's even more impressive is that across party, this is also true. And as Dr. Kraska said, is that we know racial disparities are present in every single place where there is data. So there's no place where we have looked at search warrant data or raid data where racial disparities are not present. The other thing I'll do very quickly is just walk through sort of why we want to focus people, not talking about no-knock warrants specifically, but this is about making sure that the raids go away. So a no-knock raid is with or without a no-knock warrant when the police force themselves into his home. A no-knock warrant is a legal document that gives the police permission to do that. A knock and announce warrant is what you see on TV, a basic search warrant. Hi, I have a search warrant to search the premises, but the police aren't actually doing that. They are saying they're knocking for 2 seconds and then breaking into people's homes. And those are called quick knocks, when a knock and announce warrant turns into something else. And that's what this bill is uniquely set up to do, is to restrict that process from happening. So nationally, there are 37 cities and states that are working on legislation to do this. And New York State has the only bill that would actually stop the raids from happening in the first place. An honor to be here.
Okay, sorry, I was on mute before. Next, we have Tamika Mallory, from co-founder of Until Freedom.
Greetings, good morning. This is Angelo Pinto with Until Freedom, and I'm standing in for Tamika Mallory, who had to run. So thank you all for having us. It is a pleasure to be here and stand with Senator Sanders and of course, Senator Brian Benjamin, who are working on this very important bill. So just to give you folks some background, for the better part of this year, Until Freedom has relocated and moved to Louisville, Kentucky, where we were working directly hand in hand with Breonna Taylor's family to bring about justice for Breonna Taylor. We had the privilege of also working with a sister by the name of Keturah Heron, who works for the ACLU of Louisville, who was at the forefront of passing the No More No Locks legislation in Louisville, Kentucky. So in Louisville, Kentucky, we have ended no-knock warrants. We are currently working with Senator Attica Scott, who is also pushing for a ban on no-knocks across the state. What we have found in Louisville, Kentucky, advocating for justice for Breonna Taylor was that there was a lot of opposition. And many folks on the front line who've been protesting day in and day out have realized that their attempts to disrupt police terror have been thwarted. The Attorney General didn't deliver the kind of justice that we wanted. The Mayor of Louisville has not delivered the kind of justice that we've wanted. And in many ways, folks have felt betrayed and at a standstill. But one of the things that Until Freedom, and of course, our partners like Senator Attica Scott of Kentucky and Kentora Herron have realized is that it is important for us not simply to protest, but it is critical that we take our protests to politics. We are actually at the moment in Georgia working on the very important Senate runoff races. But beyond that, we often say, folks, we have to go from protest to politics to policy. And we are grateful, we are excited that around the states, around the country, folks have decided that this is not just important legislation, but it must be the kind of legislation that's prioritized. We have been working on police brutality and police violence and police murder from New York City and Eric Garner. I had the privilege of serving as the campaign manager for the Raise the Age campaign in New York State. We worked on creating a special prosecutor after the death of Eric Garner. And we realized New York City and New York State is no different from Louisville. Louisville is everywhere and is certainly in New York State. And to have legislators, which doesn't exist around the country, who are willing to stand and prioritize legislation like this, not only makes the work easier, but honors the name of Breonna Taylor. One of the things that we talk about quite consistently with Ms. Tamika Palmer, who is Breonna Taylor's mother, is that the fight doesn't end. And how do we continue and honor the legacy of Breonna Taylor beyond some of the setbacks? And what we've realized is that when the front door closes, when the side door isn't open, and the back door isn't accessible, sometimes you have to go through a window. And we believe this policy that you folks are advocating for, and no-knock warrants being ended across the country, is still pursuing justice for Breonna and making sure, as we say time and time again, there are no more Breonna Taylors, not only in Louisville, but around the country. And there's no more Brian Taylors around the country or in Louisville, and hopefully not in New York State as well. So thank you all for the opportunity for having us. We look forward to continuing the fight. In any way we can be of support, we will. Thank you all.
Okay, next we welcome Dr. Hazel Dukes, President of the NAACP New York State Conference.
And my friend.
Dr. Dukes, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning. Thank you
Good
so
morning.
much for inviting me to participate. I heard the young man speak, and he's absolutely right. We must move from demonstration now to legislation. And I'm not surprised that Assemblyman O'Donnell and Senator Benjamin and Sanders is leading this fight. They have been in this before they became elected officials. And most certainly since they have been in their respective houses, they have been on the forefront. It is so important that we in New York, they say we are the Empire State, we are leaders, we are progressive, we all the adjectives that you can say. Tamika is one of my little mentees. Donna from ACLU, we worked on all of these cases for the last 20 or 25 years. We've been there in the demonstrations. We've been there in the halls of Albany, and most certainly we will take this on our legislative agenda. Also, we probably will be virtual, but we will not be able to walk the halls, but we will be on the phones and on Zoom calls to all our legislators. Yes, we must get this bill passed. It's long overdue. If we are talking about criminal justice reform, we just can't stop at one thing. We just can't be with 850 and this and that. We have to encompass the whole package of criminal justice reform. And this is another step, and it's in the right direction. And so thank you. You have the NAACP New York State Conference full support for supporting the bills.
Thank you.
Okay, now we welcome Pastor Kaji Dosa. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Senior Minister of Park Avenue Christian Church.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. My name is Pastor Kaji Dosa, and I am the senior pastor of the Park, and also here representing the New Sanctuary Coalition, a group that stops the deportation of immigrants. So here's the thing. Agents of the state believing they have access to Black bodies is absolutely nothing new. The history of this country betrays it. The enslavement of my African ancestors was, of course, the original no-knock raid. But we're here today because we insist on doing something new, because we require that those ways of old will come to an end. And because, as it turns out, we proclaim and believe and declare and are legislating that Black lives matter. And pretending that safety only applies to white people, which is what tends to be the belief, at least that is legislated in the country, well, that is coming to an end. I truly proclaim that and believe it. So yeah, we filled these streets after Breonna Taylor's murder by the Louisville Police Department. We filled these streets when our police departments here in New York continued to wreak havoc and violence on Black bodies in our communities. And we would have filled these streets 2 years ago when Anjanette Young was handcuffed naked in her home in the city of Chicago, if that city hadn't covered it up for so long. But as we know, the state has been all too tolerant of these direct incursions into our privacy and these direct assaults on our bodies and in our homes. Whether it's no knock or slow knock, we are saying knock it off. So thank you to the sponsors, Senators Sanders and Benjamin, Assemblymember O'Donnell, and supporters of this next step and what we absolutely must do right now to make our way to true freedom. Thank you.
Okay, next we will hear from Donna Lieberman, Executive Director, New York City Liberties Union.
Thanks so much. I'm a director of the New York Civil Liberties Union, which is the New York affiliate of the ACLU. It's good to be with you today to join sponsors, Senator Sanders and Benjamin and Assemblymember O'Donnell and fellow advocates who I haven't seen in too long in announcing this critical legislation. I want to begin by taking us back nearly 2 decades. On a spring morning in Harlem in 2003, Alberta Spruill had just finished getting dressed for her city government job when her door exploded. The NYPD had bashed it in, and in an instant, officers with combat equipment launched a flash grenade into her home. Ms. Spruill was stunned as they rushed into her home and threw her into handcuffs. And within an hour, she had suffered a massive heart attack and soon died. Police had raided the wrong apartment, acting on a bad drug tip again. And Alberta Spruill was gone in 2003. And in 2003, we said her name. We've been saying her name for far too many years now. Yet this country and our state have continued to militarize our police and to fuel the racist and deadly war on drugs. No-knock raids have been a key weapon wielded by police throughout. And the list of people killed in their homes by police executing no-knock warrants is way too long. So let's be clear. No-knock raids are a tool of terror and violence, not public safety. They have been wielded as a weapon in the war on drugs, which explicitly targeted Black communities. And in this year, when the trail of grief caused by no-knock warrants invaded the home of Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, a new and energized movement to end police violence emerged. Tens of thousands of New Yorkers in the streets, joining hundreds of thousands across the country for weeks, night after night, because Black lives are not collateral damage in the so-called war on drugs. That is not acceptable, because we are sick and tired of having to say her name and his name and their name over and over and over again. The legislation announced today will dramatically curtail no-knock and slow-knock raids in New York State. It is a critical step on the journey to eliminating abusive and dangerous raids altogether. This bill also marks important progress towards demilitarizing our police and limiting the ultimate horrific human costs in our failed and racist war on drugs. Simply put, this is a public safety bill. It will save lives. The New York Civil Liberties Union is proud to stand today with the sponsors and urge leaders in Albany to act quickly. And before I end, love to Hazel Dukes and Tamika, who I've stood with so many times. I'm grateful to the legislators who have introduced this and are standing with us today. Albany must act quickly to right this wrong, because in New York, we really do believe that Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
Okay, now we will hear closing remarks from Senator Sanders, Senator Benjamin, and Assemblymember O'Donnell.
I will let my colleagues go first. Senator Benjamin, Senator and Assemblyman O'Donnell.
Perfect. Well, first of all, as you can see, we have without question gathered the A team here. We've got some of the best policy minds, some of the best advocates on the planet. I mean, you know, Pastor Kaji and I, we just passed the SCAR Act for separated children at the border just 2 days ago. Donna Lieberman, Tamika Mallory, Angelo Pinto. Tamika and Angelo come from New York. I mean, they're right now in Georgia and they're in Louisville because they're taking on national fights, but this is their home. Hazel Dukes. I mean, what else do I need to say besides her name? D-Ray, you know, just on top of it on the policy side. So we have the dream team together. We are going to get this done. And what we have to do is make sure that we're working together, we're mobilized, and I know we will do that. I can't be proud to be part of a team focused on something as important as this. I'm glad we have come together. Thank you all. Thank you again to Senator Sanders for allowing me to become a co-prime with him. I know how, you know, egos work in our line of business. So I just want to say that again, because I really appreciate you for letting me be a part of the leadership on this. And Assemblymember O'Donnell, thank you for all that you have done and what you're going to do in the Assembly on this. And we'll work together. If you need us to make calls in the Assembly, we will do that. Whatever, you know, we will work together.
No, I got the Assembly down, Brian. I'm okay.
Done.
I'm okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
There it is. You heard it here first. So anyway, thank you all. Let's work together. Let's make this happen. And I believe we can get this done. Thank you.
I just want to give a big thank you to DeRay, who took his time yesterday to talk to me about what allegedly life is like as a legislator in Albany. It is a place like no other. It should not be replicated. But after almost 20 years, I know the pitfalls and I know the problems. And the one thing I want to say at the end of this is we must remember the bill numbers when advocating. The bill number currently in the Assembly is 11171. That's for this year. We'll shortly get a new bill for next year. But the reason that's important is because only Senator Sanders and I can control what that bill says. In our structure, they can't put a comma in without my express written approval. And so what you're going to find as we work together and build the movement that we have built before, other people are going to come in and create alternatives that aren't as good as this. And we had that problem with 50A. We had some people who said modify, don't repeal, modify, don't repeal. So we have to stand strong. We have to communicate with people, but we all must always include the Senate bill number and the Assembly bill number in those communications. So there's no question that a modified version is going to do. And I thank you for being here, and I'm going to take my suit jacket off, which I haven't had on in a while. Thank you.
Well, don't take your jacket off yet. We have some work for you to do, sir. I am very grateful to work with the best people that money cannot buy, that there will be no watering down of these things, no changing of them. We're going to continue this fight until we see a little justice on this issue. In the Senate, my assembly member, the bill is number S.11. At your prodding, we were able to hurry up and get a number. And if 11 is a lucky number, well, we'll take that too. And here's the takeaway, my friends. There are better ways of carrying out the police function without going into an over militarization of these things. I know a little something of this. I am a Marine, a veteran of the Marine Corps, and we used flash grenades and all of these things that you're talking about. This is not what you use on civilians, my friends. There's a rare moment when you need something like that. As Brian's daughter could actually tell you, it's a rare moment that you need things of that nature. You simply don't need it. There are better ways of doing it. Most people are not going to resist violently. And under those conditions, save those tactics for people who will do those things. We have come together and put a common sense approach to this issue, something that is better policing. And under those conditions, I want to just end with understanding why we are here. We're here because of Alberta Spruill. We're here because of our new sister, Antoinette Young, the latest victim, or one of the latest victims that we have. We're here, of course, because of Breonna Taylor. And my friends, if New York has its way, this is the last time we're going to have to say these names, because from now on, we'll be saying no knock is out, and no quick knock, no none of that stuff. And as the pastor said, knock it off. We just want justice. And now we'll see if there are any questions. Thank you kindly for everyone who has attended. Thank you for all of those who have struggled so long, Professor Kraska, so long on this issue, and fought long and hard and documented and made our job as legislators very easy, because you gave us the facts that we need to defend the people. Now I'll turn it back to you, Anne-Marie, and let's see if there's any questions, comments, or statements from any press.
Okay, so I believe we have two members of the press here. We have Alice Sperry and we have Pia Ko. So who would like to go first, Alice or Pia?
I can go first, unless Alice.
Please introduce yourself and state the name of your publication.
Sure. I'm Pia. I'm a reporter with Queens County Politics. Thank you guys so much for having me here this morning and for all the work you guys are doing. I just have a couple questions. My first one is for Dr. Kraska. You described how the instances of no-knock warrants in the past few decades have grown exponentially. Why has this happened? And is it a nationwide issue or specific to particular parts of the country?
Thank you. It's definitely nationwide. The first research I did was 2 national studies with an 80% response rate. And so it's rigorous, good data. And then I followed up on those data over the years and found the same thing. So it's absolutely nationwide. It is hard to document at this point because this phenomenon has gone underground. There's very little transparency. It's very difficult to get these data, but we'll keep working on that. What was the second part of your question?
I was just wondering why these instances of no-knock warrants have been growing exponentially since the 80s.
Yeah, the why is complicated, but the simple answer is the war on drugs. The Reagan war on drugs in the mid 1980s kicked this stuff off. It really took off in the 1990s in a big way. Police departments were primarily militarizing themselves through SWAT teams, and SWAT teams were becoming more and more normalized in the everyday functions of police departments. But here's the key. Then that military model found in SWAT teams started to disperse in the rest of the police institution. And so now you see nearly every officer wanting to be tactical. Tactical is a synonym for paramilitary.
It should be noted, Pia, that New York currently does not quantify how many raids that we do. So we really have a problem. And if we were not getting rid of no knock and slow knock and quick knock and, well, we just don't knock at all, we would have to quantify this. But you had another question, I believe, Pia.
Yeah, thank you so much. My other question is for Assemblymember O'Donnell. You described the changes that are being made to no-knock legislation with the new bill, but DRA said that the only real solution is a complete ban on raids, whether or not there's a no-knock warrant issued. How is this bill going to eventually lead to banning raids altogether?
So let me just clarify real quick, is that this bill will actually effectively end in the raid. So what Assemblymember O'Donnell noted is that there are a small set of exceptions in there around terrorism, active shooter, human trafficking, and murder, like barricade situations where murder is likely. When we look at the national data, and Dr. Kraska helps us look at this across the country, the vast majority of raids are happening for drugs. So the carve-outs in the New York bill are so few and far between that effectively this bill will actually end. It'll be the only bill that actually ends the practice of the raids, knowing that just restricting the warrants isn't enough because, again, the police are getting knock and announce warrants that are basic warrants and are actually raiding people's homes, just as a point of clarification, Pia.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
I defer to DeRay. He wrote
it.
Pia, are those all your questions?
Yeah, that should be it for now. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Alice Berry from The Intercept. Alice, do you want to ask your questions? Where'd she go?
I think she might have fell off.
Okay, do we have any other members of the media that I have not recognized? No.
Well, if that's the case, then these people have such work that they need to do, Anne-Marie. Is anything final that you want to say, Anne-Marie? Is anything that's critical? Or else I'm going to give them their benediction and get them back to the front lines.
I turn it over to you, Senator.
My friends, a joy to work with you. A joy to, we're doing some incredible stuff. I'm talking about America is doing some incredible stuff around now. And when the story is finally written, if you're not in it, then I don't want to read it. I am so grateful to the stuff that you guys are doing. I am so grateful that you're allowing me and my legislative colleagues to be the tip of the spear, but the tip is no good without the rest of the spear. So I'm grateful that you guys are doing. Now let's get back to the front line because we have a lot of justice to do and we still got some more daylight today. Let's get some justice in our lifetime today. Give my regard to the Taylor family, to this group. I mean, if I just went on, it would keep us here for 400 years. Instead of that, let's get back to the front line. Let's get some justice in our lifetime. God bless you all.